Got the notification.
Hey, everybody. Okay, we hope you are as excited as we are today to just dive into this webinar, Demystifying AI for Contact Centers. So I'm Michelle Brigman, and I am an over 2-decade award-winning CX and contact center leader who, honestly, I've taken some hard-won wisdom and battle scars from my experiences from global iconic brands like Dell, Citi, 7-Eleven, Medallia, and now I use all of that wisdom, again, hard-won wisdom, to really help companies accelerate their own CX strategies as an independent consultant and president of Advantage CX. And joining me today is my long-time friend and colleague, analytics and AI guru, the fabulous Frank Mendoza.
Thanks, Michelle. And don't stress the long time. I mean, it
kind of
kind
old,
of shows
Frank.
our age a little bit. But yes, Frank Mendoza, managing partner and founder of Catalytics. Over the last 8 years, Catalytics has helped consumer brands to execute actionable AI strategies to help grow top-line revenue by tens of millions of dollars. And in those last 8 years, we've worked with some huge influential brands like Kellogg's and Keurig Dr. Pepper, Beam Suntory, et cetera, to help achieve those goals by leveraging AI solutions to improve and accelerate their speed to market, forecast accuracies, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome. Thanks, Frank. Oh, okay. So AI. It feels like every time this comes up, you've been handed this like language, a dictionary that's from some foreign language. So today's webinar is really about making AI accessible. And if we do our job, Frank, right, we have a little bit of fun.
Absolutely. The intent here is to really give people the confidence, right, in some of these technologies. I know, Michelle, I'm being bombarded with all the hype that goes around with it, all these terminologies that go along with AI. And it's can be very intimidating for folks, right? And so, like you said, we definitely want to make this accessible to folks, give them more confidence that they understand how it might be able to be leveraged within the contact center operations. And at the end of the day, just level the playing field a little bit in terms of some of the technology and some of the tools that are out there that are available to some folks.
Said it well. All right. So those of you listening, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to drop them in the chat. We're going to do our best to get to those throughout this conversation. But with that, I'm going to say, let's just get started. All right. So I have a question. Have any of you ever been in a situation where you are asked to do more with less? Me. Okay, I can't even count the number of times that I have been told, sorry, Michelle, we just can't afford those tools to automate the process, or nope, can't hire any more people, even though those call volumes are spiking. And it always seems like on top of all that lovely bad news, they're going, okay, we're also going to cut your budget. And we're going to make sure that you maintain your employee morale. Oh, and what can you do to optimize processes? And how are you innovating the work? And most importantly, are you keeping our customers happy? And are they coming back? And it's like I compare it to being handed, I don't know, a plastic spoon and being told, okay, why don't you go ahead and dig like 100-mile tunnel? Just completely unrealistic. I don't know. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Very familiar. Yep.
And as AI starts emerging as really this groundbreaking technology, it's giving us this possibility to really evolve our businesses because, right, we all want to be able to do things better, faster, cheaper. However, with anything that's new and emerging, you got to understand it if you want to really reap the rewards and benefits from using it. And recently, Frank and I, we saw each other at a contact center conference. And as he and I were just talking amongst ourselves, and as we were talking to some of the other participants, it became very clear that, when you start thinking about just practical implementation of AI, people are struggling. They don't understand. They're struggling comprehending it. They they just need extra help if they're really going to figure out how can we revolutionize the way we do business, because I want to make the best decision. So that's why we're gathered here today. We want to make sure that is something that is within everybody's reach. And through a series of upcoming webinars, we're going to guide you to unraveling the mysteries of AI, figure out, which aspects are relevant for your specific business, because we know one size doesn't fit all. And then we want to give you some very practical, usable tools to help you initiate the development of your very own use cases based on your business. So with that, Frank, AI is everywhere. Like you said, I see it in webinars. There's a million industry conferences. My LinkedIn is full of posts about AI, and it's ambiguous and it's confusing. So please make us smarter and help us start this conversation today with, let's just level set, to give us a baseline on what is AI.
Yeah, like you said, Michelle, I think it's the challenge is not everybody's starting from the same starting point, right? And so let's spend the first few minutes here just getting everybody kind of level set in terms of what AI is, what were the drivers led us to where we are today, and what's necessary for AI to actually operate. So artificial intelligence in the simplicity form is it's a machine's ability to perform cognitive functions that we usually associate with the human, right? Now, AI has been around for multiple decades, but certain things had to happen for us to get to the point where we are today, right? There's three really drivers that led us to here. The first is the ability to have enough computational power, right? So we needed microchips and graphic cards and things like that could actually perform all these high order computations in order for achieving it. And that we've seen over the last, say, decade. Also algorithms, the ability to kind of decipher and analyze data statistically to drive patterns recognition and things like that, that also came to a head. And then the third driver is really around data. These tools require just vast amounts of data in order for them to perform where they need to. And this could be in the form of structured data, things like you would associate with columns and rows, something maybe an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet. Or it could be unstructured data, which would consist of text or images or even audio files. So those three things had to come to a head. And there has been a hype cycle with regards to AI over the last 8+ years. But Michelle, I think you recognize, and probably our audience recognizes, that November of last year, with the release of ChatGPT by OpenAI, there's been another level to the hype cycle that we have not seen before. And this hype cycle is really associated with what's known as generative AI. And that's where I think all the excitement and all the potential exists for organizations to really take advantage of it.
Awesome. Well, so I want to come back to the generative AI here in a second. I want to just kind of repeat back a little bit of what I heard you just say, because that was a lot of really great information about how did we get here. There were kind of the three things. First of all, in order, right, for machines to think and do on our behalf. So they had to be able to think and do on our behalf. In order to do that, the technology just itself had to catch up. It had to be in place. And then we needed to have the intelligence and know-how in order to ask the right questions and tell the data what we needed it to do.
Yes.
And then finally, it was the ability to connect these disparate data sources, like you said, structured and unstructured data, to be able to get them to come together so that it gave us a pool of information that then we could apply this the smarts, the intelligence that we were gaining on how to really get it to work for us.
And we're seeing that every day, right? So how much data are you generating on a daily basis, right? That data needed to be available, right? And in order for the algorithms to do what they need and for the technology to be able to compute all the computations that are necessary for these things to do.
Yeah.
All these things have really come to a head, I'd say, in the last decade and really propelled this AI hype. But this generative AI, it's just blowing everybody away in terms of what's capable. It's amazing.
Well, it was a good time to solve that whole thing that I've heard for all these years of I'm data rich, but intelligence and insights poor. I mean, this is exactly what has what's been the recurring theme. And I think it also has helped to perpetuate the problem of siloed organizations where a company is less effective because the various departments aren't able to work together. So that's one of the things that I think I personally get really excited about what this is opening up for us.
Yeah, and that's a great point, right, Michelle, which is those silos are not going to go away. AI does not make those silos go away. We'll talk here in this session and certainly in the next session about use cases, but it is predicated on that available data to be able to take AI for it to take advantage of it. So we'll talk a little about that for sure, with regards to making sure that you have the data necessary and you're using the right use cases for your organization.
Perfect. Okay. My next question, this is still kind of that level setting question.
Yes.
I hear these terms, we hear AI, we're talking about, we hear machine learning, we hear deep learning, like talk about what the difference is in each of those.
So let's talk at the highest level, right? There's artificial intelligence. I equate that to a discipline, right? So think physics, think chemistry, think AI. There's so much different aspects that you need to understand in order for you to really take advantage of this. The good news is there's a subset of that called machine learning, a subset of artificial intelligence called machine learning. Machine learning is leveraging, like I mentioned, algorithms, different data sources to really identify patterns to get to a specific output, right? That could be a prediction, and we'll talk about that in a second. Deep learning is even a subset of machine learning. Deep learning, what its intent to do here is to leverage neural networks, right? We won't get into what is a neural network and how do they work, but just think of it, it's equated to kind of the brain, the way the brain works, which is you have a bunch of different nodes and weights and biases and things like that. But at the end of the day, it provides an output. And so if you think AI as the umbrella, machine learning is a subset, and then deep learning is a subset of that machine learning. And that's where, more traditional AI and then these generative AI solutions are leveraging both machine learning and deep learning in order for them to take advantage. But then there's other things that we're probably not going to talk about today, but autonomous vehicles, RPA, things like that also fall under the AI umbrella, but not necessarily for this conversation today.
Well, so the things that most companies have been using up until now, like historically with bots, we're getting into the what you called traditional
machine learning. So let's take a second, Michelle, right?
Let's talk about this.
Let's break out the differences, right? So mentioned before, been a huge hype cycle with regards to AI. Now with the introduction of generative AI, huge hype cycle now as well. But let's differentiate the two. Right. So when we're talking AI, the input can be data, right? That could be structured data, like we mentioned before, kind of rows, columns, tabular data, or it can be unstructured data. It could be images, text, audio files. The input remains the same. The algorithm, again, or model is just a statistical tool that's used to identify the patterns based on the input data that's been provided. The output, though, is where the difference between more traditional AI is lying and then these new generative AI tools. So in more traditional machine learning and AI, if you were looking for an output for, say, a number, right? A number could be, I want to predict how my sales volume for next quarter is going to be. Or you're looking at classifying something. So is this image of a dog? Or is this an image of a cat? You're classifying those things. Or even a probability, right? So all of us use Netflix, the probability that you're going to like this film or that film, right? 80%, 90% probability you're going to like this or that. Those are more traditional machine learning type solutions. But if you're looking for an output that's novel, right? And what I mean by that is it's leveraging that input data and those algorithms to get you some, say, text, like a ChatGPT, or an image being generated, like a Midjourney or DALL-E, or even audio files. So if I want to replicate my voice or generate a voice based on a script, those are generative AI solutions, right? So the input, the algorithms can be leveraging similar things. It's the output that differentiates between more traditional AI and generative AI.
Yeah. That's
Does that
helpful
make sense?
because I think about like, right. And if I'm, because our audience right now is contact center. So I think about,
Sure.
you know, working in the contact center, right? We created new technology in, or new FAQs, right? It went from something that it is a predefined when they ask this, I can give them a pretty well-defined answer. And that's kind of what I think about in terms of that traditional AI use case. Whereas now getting into this place, you know, we talk about ChatGPT, but getting into this place where it allows this more creativity.
Yeah.
And to go off the beaten path a little bit and be able to have the intelligence to come up with a more creative answer that is not so defined and specific that we've been accustomed to, just to kind of say it a different way and make it relatable to even
No,
more
I think
people with the
you're
contact
hitting it,
center.
right, Michelle, which is, it's all about, it's not necessarily rule-based anymore,
Mhm.
right? It's really, and we'll talk about here in a second
Yeah.
how it's being leveraged, but it's now taking more natural language, right? And understanding what should the response be. I equate it to, it's a paradigm shift for folks, right? It's that, or I'm creating something to I'm editing something. These new generative AI solutions have a fantastic job of creating something that wasn't there, a first draft, if you will, a first draft of a script, or a first draft of an image, or a first draft of a song or music. It's a first draft. You still, and this is what one of the things I want to make sure our audience recognizes is, it's still necessary to maintain that human in the loop, to make sure that it is aligned with the values and the direction and the message that you want to deliver.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so while we're talking, because we're talking about contact center, let's shift gears a little bit. What is it going to mean for folks on this call? What is AI going to mean and where it's going to contact centers?
Yeah, it's these new solutions are going to certainly disrupt just about every industry, right? Andrew Ning equates it to the way electricity was when it first, it really revolutionized the way people worked and the way people operated in any industry. Contact centers are certainly not going to be immune to it. It's happening. It's necessary for people to, again, like you mentioned earlier, Michelle, recognize what it is and how they are able to take advantage of it. Michelle, recently McKinsey estimated that applying these new generative AI solutions in customer care functions can increase productivity anywhere from 30 to 45% potentially, right? And annually could, inject about $400 billion of just value in the global scale. So these are not small numbers. These are very amazing numbers. But making sure that you're applying it the right way, you're approaching it the right way, and you're doing it with intentionality and strategically are going to be where people are starting to differentiate themselves from their competitors.
Well, and I mean, those are incredibly impressive numbers. And like we said in the beginning, I don't know, but running contact centers and operations, I don't know about our listeners, but there was nobody standing there constantly with a blank check saying, Michelle, just tell me what you need. It was, man, I was the pro at how to self-fund, how to prove that I'm saving money so I can make an investment. So when you start talking about numbers like that, it gets very, very exciting in terms of the possibilities and what I can do. However, how do I make sure that, I think where I was going with this is, how do we make sure we as contact center leaders, or even the agents within the contact center, aren't looking at this as a threat in terms of job insecurity, but leaning into this new thing and being more marketable? And how can we use this to work to our advantage? I really think is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because I think so let's start with maybe where are contact centers going to be leveraging these technologies, and then we can say what is the impact going to be to those folks who currently in the contact center space, right? So certainly, I think people are starting to recognize these generative AI solutions are going to enable conversational search, right? So customers who are looking for answers quickly are going to be able to leverage these tools to ask it in a natural language. It's not going to be constrained by the rule-based chatbots that we've seen in the past. It's going to be trained on information, if you will, company knowledge bases, to provide more accurate and finely tuned to ensure that it's giving the response accurately, effectively, and efficiently when necessary. That's, potentially from a self-service perspective, but also these tools are going to be available from an agent assist perspective, right? So think of tactical and necessary functions that agents are currently doing. Things like summarizations of calls and feeding that into a CRM solution. These tools are going to be able to do that and add consistency to that. These tools are also going to be able to provide CRSs with the ability to offer recommendation, additional services, additional products based on what they're asking that right now maybe agents are currently not thinking of at first. And then there's the operation piece of it, Michelle, right? There's huge opportunity to leverage these generative AI solutions to perform repetitive tasks like we talked about, and allow CRS, reps and agents to really do higher order, higher value functions. And so that's going to help operations completely and help move organizations in the right direction. And then there's a whole element of personalization, right? So AI is going to be able to help tailor responses, including tone and style, based on the customer's profile, interactions, past interactions, and just, relevant to the customer and what they're looking for and what they're trying to drive.
It brings a whole new meaning to kind of what I used to always say is meet them where they're at, right? Meet the customer, meet the department, meet the function, the agent, whomever it is, where they are, and being able to bring forward the right tools much easier in the moment of need. Because again, running contact centers, there was so much wasted time. It was like the hunt and peck to try to find the answer, and you weren't confident as an agent if you were giving the right answer. And now when you start talking about these things where you're able to put the knowledge management intelligence into the customer's hand and pull that agent out of those remedial tasks, and the ability for AI to keep those knowledge bases updated and current, which is what gets really exciting. Because again, I go back to how often were we on, an old SharePoint or something trying to, I don't know, there's maybe companies still doing it that way. I don't know, but it was like, it took forever. And then it was like, I hope I'm giving the right answer. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah, and that's the thing right now, right? I think we're all experiencing this, which is just information overload. There's so much information, and we all recognize our contact center agents are not solving only the simple problems. They're solving very complex situations, things where they need to know multiple things like product descriptions. They need to know, challenges or technical issues. And being able to leverage these generative AI solutions, Michelle, to help assist them, get them the information, the right time to solve the issue right now. This is where the value really is going to lie. Across the board.
And to spend time developing your people, right? Because again, I go back to, I know I had in financial services, one of my financial services companies, one of my many areas of responsibility was like even the QA team, and it was how much of it was still manual. And even with that, right, agents were only getting feedback on a few calls. Their scorecard, their bonus was built on a little, whereas again, there are these tools that allow them to understand every interaction and just go in and target the insights and kudos on what they do well, or development opportunities, and just narrow in exactly what they need to do. You just, again, don't have to waste so much
And
time
bringing
to
people
try
up to speed, right, Michelle? Bringing the learning curve associated with it.
Yes.
These tools are really going to speed up that learning curve associated with it, and help them get more aligned to high performers already who have that ability, right? The stuff is going to be amazing. But it really does beg the question, Michelle. Like you said, we're all hearing, oh my God, AI is going to just displace all jobs in the customer care organization. There's no room for humans anymore in our customer service organizations. And that's just not the reality. I always, when I'm talking to folks, is recognize that no one should be attempting to fully automate human jobs out of existence. But you don't also want to wait on the sidelines and wait for generative AI to be all ironed out, to solve all its problems before you take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Right. Because the reality is, your competitors, those who actually find and execute strong business cases, are going to start to create competitive advantage for themselves.
That's right. That's
So
right.
what does that mean? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, even, and I'm not going to go really down this rabbit hole, but I will say this on a personal level. Here I have spent the last 6 months really learning, like, how to develop training content using AI. So what does that actually mean? That means that I needed to train an organization on a new process. Before, I was calling the training department, getting on their wait lists, because we already know they're already short-staffed, they don't have time. So getting that training out was like a freaking act of Congress that you had to wait a long time for. Now, literally by the end of the day, I could create videos with people, whether it was that I didn't have to film, I could use my likeness as an avatar, I could do my screen share, I could do all of these cool things and get really valuable information out to the audience immediately. And our training departments should be equipped with tools like this.
That's right.
To your point, shorten that ramp time and onboarding, especially now when I'm listening to my call center colleagues talking about how they're struggling with class fill rates.
Yes.
So I can't get enough people in, and then the attrition and burn is so high right now. Like, I don't have extra time to wait for all of the things to be perfect to get them on the floor and actually answering customer inquiries.
You don't. And I think that's I think what you and I are both saying right now, which is, it's incumbent upon contact center leaders to really start to experiment with these. But it also means that there's the other side, which is, how do I prepare my people though?
Yeah.
And how do I prepare myself? And how should I be thinking differently about the functions that these folks have historically been able to do, and what their new functions are going to be including, right? And
so what should they be doing? Because these folks are super busy. So how can the organizational leaders prepare themselves for what's coming with AI?
It's the right question, right, Michelle? Because I think we're all in that precipice of, we're looking over the edge and knowing this is a different world we're about to embark on. So we got to prepare ourselves. So what I would argue is, again, a paradigm shift in terms of what people have historically done in the past to where they're going to do. And so my approach that I'd suggest to people is to really break down the responsibilities of the underlying tasks of the things you're looking into with regards to AI. So look at the opportunities. And again, Michelle, we'll use the next session, right, to dive a little bit deeper into use cases and how to be thinking about that. But just at a high level right now, if there are areas you're thinking about opportunities, look at it from a breakdown of tasks, but then look at those and say, what are the skill sets necessary for those tasks? What I would argue, in a post-generative AI world, the skill sets that agents are going to need going forward are going to be higher order cognitive work. This includes things like judgment, insights, moral reasoning, and even innovation, right? So we're still at the very early stages of generative AI right now. And so one of the tasks of agents are going to be looking for powerful ways to use it, right? So right now, this shouldn't be left to just designers. This should be where you're engaging your CRSs to really understand, because they have firsthand knowledge of what's working and not working and what could be improved. How do we leverage these tools going forward to do continual improvement? And that's going to require a higher order thought process than just let me solve a question and answer a question for a customer.
Well, so do you think, based on what you're seeing, do you feel that it is the things that are taking a lot of time? Like, go into a little bit more detail about, they're doing a lot, right? So yeah. Is it the high volume call contact driver reasons? Is it the what takes the longest amount of time to solve? What's like, just in general? And like I say, I know we're going to talk more, but just in general, just to kind of get my head wrapped around it.
Great. So I think what I'm arguing right now is this is where you need the engagement of CRSs, right? The agents themselves to understand where are opportunities to leverage these generative AI solutions, right? So is it on the large volume calls, but maybe they're simpler, not as complex? Is it on the more complex calls? That's where you really want them to think on a different scale, to say, help the leaders identify where are their opportunities from a generative AI. The other piece.
Do you think it's waste? Do you think the question, I'm gonna belabor this a little bit, because please. I think if I went to my contact center agents and I said, where could we use generative AI? They'd be like, well, I don't even really know what that is. So is it, what's wasting time? What is wasteful? What is like, what's the more basic question that I'm asking them to get their engagement and participation?
So we'll definitely, during the next session, introduce a framework for contact centers to think about with regards to where are opportunities to leverage AI. And that matrix is really a 2x2. And we shared it at that symposium for contact center where we talked last time, Michelle. But its focus is on what's your competitive advantage versus how much creativity is necessary for that specific task.
Yeah.
Right. Won't go into a lot of detail around that because we'll share that with the audience next time. But in a nutshell, you really want to look for tasks that are lower than human creativity and are lower from a competitive advantage, right? Think FAQs, think areas where the answers are pretty standard, right? So things that are very, if you will, low value add for a human to participate in. Right.
Well, so and you're also raising the kind of call to action to say, as a leader, don't try to tackle this in a vacuum. Yes. It is your people can be a very influential voice. So know that part of this call to action for you to be effective is know that you're going to bring them in to participate. And there's probably some people who are freaking technology junkies that are in your contact center that would love to roll up their sleeves and play in this space a little bit more. You know, there's those natural continuous improvement thinkers. I know, Frank, that's how we're wired, right? Yep. Like, you have these people that even before you get started, just start asking, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you thinking? And that's a good.
Yeah, and we've experienced it, right? Where agents feel like they're left after the fact, a thought after the fact. Oh, yeah. Right? And this is where I would challenge these leaders to really engage them, make them part of the conversation to actually identify areas of opportunity. And again, we'll provide a framework and some homework here to think about where those opportunities might lie. But engaging them and now forcing them to think at a higher order about the business and where it's going. Because these tools, Michelle, they are amazing, but they have a lot of limits and challenges associated with them. So the other functions that agents can perform is just ensuring these generative AI systems are in alignment, right? Are they gauging accurately the intent and the problem that customers actually, and if not, how do we fine tune them? How do we improve them? How do we ensure the scripts are better? That they're providing solutions and resolution quicker. Mm-hmm. And those are areas of opportunity where you're going to require agents to help fill that function, to help train these tools going forward. Yeah. And then there's the testing and evaluating. there's bias in these systems. So how do we make sure that the agents are trained to continually monitor these systems and evaluate whether or not these biases are actually negatively impacting the customer? And these biases are a moving target. So again, the agent needs to think in a higher order than where they have been in the past to make sure these systems are performing the way they're intent on performing.
Well, and think about as a contact, so there's kind of two thoughts I have here, but think about as a contact center leader, when you are unleashing these tools, these platforms, these technologies, you are putting yourself in a situation where you're going to know very early when something isn't working. Because how often is it that there is something broken, but I always call it reaches critical mass. It has to reach critical mass before you realize that it's a problem. Meaning you've had so many customers call and tell you, contact and say it's a problem. So they're your detection source, which is like the worst place you want to put your customer. Or you are, you're getting, like I say, you're getting your surveys, or you're finding rework happening, you're having quality issues, and it takes a lot of volume for you to go, maybe there's something wrong there. Now you can really move up that timeline to notice things much more quickly and be able to address them before they impact many customers. And that is an incredibly empowering and a very financially lucrative place for you to apply this type of functionality and capability.
Absolutely, Michelle. I think I could have said it better myself. That these are opportunities, right, that people need to recognize and make people aware. Because the last thing I'll say is from a data privacy and ethical perspective, right? The other thing the agents will be tasked with doing is ensuring the safety and the proprietary information that exists within an organization. So continual improvement, testing and evaluating, making sure in alignment, protecting and securing information from a privacy and ethical perspective. All these things are necessary for generative AI systems to work properly. And this is where I think the shift needs to happen a little bit in terms of how leaders are viewing CSRs, right? And leveraging those agents to really grab the value that they bring, which is the human judgment and element to the equation. And the last thing, which I think hit on what you just said, which is there's got to be a mechanism that these leaders are putting in place to give people an ability to really effectively communicate and report when there's challenges with these generative AI solutions as they go forward.
Yeah. I also love the fact that, over the last few years, we've heard a lot about, well, what about customer service as a revenue stream, like the sales? So right now, and it always, I don't know, people tended to be on very much polarized on where do they stood on that. But how often I know that I would hear customers building that relationship with the service agent and having, telling them what they needed, and that it just landed flat because the customer service agent had nothing really to do with it. They had nowhere to take that, what to do. So now when you can introduce things like AI to look and listen and identify those trigger words that say, instead of like, oh, we've had a compliance violation, something bad, but like listen for things that are good, that can then create that funnel of outreach by whether it's service or marketing or whomever, but there is a trigger that is going to be able to invite additional relationship building. I mean, how it gets the pressure off of the service agent and puts it into the hands of technology to really seize new opportunities.
No, that's a great point, Michelle. I think the personalization that's going to be possible with generative AI, the ability to look at vast amounts of data and identify those opportunities. But like you said, being able to prepare our agents to know what to do when those situations arise. I think there's huge opportunity to start to view the contact center as a revenue generating opportunity.
So Frank, I want a couple of things I want to say just before I want to do some wrap up things. But one, I think, thank you for just helping us understand that when we talk about AI, that's the ambiguous overarching term. So whenever we're like, okay, yeah, but what does that actually mean? There's a reason we feel that way,
That's
because it isn't well defined there.
Yeah.
So now you talked about traditional AI, which is more of the capability we are much more accustomed to seeing today in the workplace and in some of the contact centers we use. We saw it show up a lot with during COVID with delivery, grocery delivery or curbside pickup. It was showing up very prevalent in those environments. And now getting into where is it going to take us as it evolves into something much more creative, and us understanding that things like machine learning and growing intelligence that way to that whole deep learning, where it is much more creative and like how you said, creating something new that didn't exist before, it starts to really make sense. So when I'm thinking about my contact center, where am I on that curve? Do I just need to automate and just have something else take work away from something maybe an agent is doing? That's my early phase, versus am I ready to mature certain processes and features and functionality into something much more, what's the word? Requiring a lot more intelligence and deductive reasoning, like you said before. Then that's where generative AI comes in. With that, the purpose of today's webinar was for us to just get that basic understanding. And I really think you did a good job with that. Thank you. So we have another one coming up. It's kind of part 2 to this, that is going to be on the 17th at 1. We'll send out information on it, but tell us, what are we going to do during that event?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it today, right? So no question, Michelle, these technologies right now are in a hype cycle. Gartner's hype cycle, if you're aware of that, right now places generative AI at the peak of that hype cycle. And unfortunately, the next step for most of these technologies that are at the hype cycle is what's known as the trough of disillusionment. And the trough of disillusionment is there because what happens is the expectations are just not being met, right? And so I would argue that's a function of not thinking of these tools strategically and with intention, and understanding where their use cases are, opportunities for your organization. So from a contact center perspective, the next session, Michelle, is really going to focus on understanding that framework that I mentioned earlier about where are opportunities, or how you should be looking at opportunities for the contact center space in your operations, but then also how to identify where you are today on that maturity scale that you just mentioned, right? And so what's your current state? What are the opportunities? And then at the end of the day, how do you measure success to make sure that when you are exploring these and investing in these technologies, that you're doing it with intention and aligned to the overall organization's goals and objectives?
Yes, because what you just said right there is a really important point. Learn the hard way. But if you want to get a yes on your investment, one of the smartest things that you can do is make sure that you are showing very clear linkage in the work that you want to improve and what it is going to mean to the company's strategic priorities, which is not always your departmental or your preferred priorities. But what I have found is once you get the yes, you're more likely to get the second yes that gets the third yes. So, you gotta play the games wisely. And so what I think is really cool too is, Frank, I mean, you and I spent some time, both from our different points of view, putting together a workbook that could be kind of a good pre-work leading up to that session. If you come to that session, you don't have your workbook done, it's okay. It'll be a tool for you to use. But we wanted very much to go from giving you concepts and saying, here's activities that you can go do. So tell us a little bit about that workbook.
Yeah, so the workbook, let me share a little bit of information, Michelle. Just let me know if it's actually sharing.
It's sharing.
Great. So this workbook, again, like Michelle mentioned, it's really around helping you walk through a little bit in preparation for the next session. It's going to ask questions about where you currently where your current state really is for your operations. It's going to dive into how you measure success. It's also going to give you line of sight to, are there other organizations or functions or groups that you could actually partner with? And then at the end of the day, how are you really going to see value, operational efficiency, et cetera, to demonstrate the business case at the end of the day. Again, like Michelle said, not absolutely necessary, but certainly I think a valuable tool to help you on your AI journey and kind of allow you to think strategically and intention with regards to AI.
I kind of think about we're giving them a little, here's your mini discovery session
exactly.
you can have with your own business and your own operation that's going to only help you from a foundational as then we progress through the overall cycle of where do we go from what is AI to, hey, here's what I actually want to go try experiment with in the next year and a half. So awesome. I'm excited about that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, also finally, what about people that, they have need for more urgent support or they'd like to brainstorm a bit? What's the best next step for them?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll include a link here to a strategy session. So Michelle and I are offering some time to sit down with you as a contact center leader to really start to identify areas of opportunity with regards to AI to really improve the customer experience and drive benefit to your organization, ensure alignment. Really, this is an intent to help you along your journey and certainly answer any questions that you might have with regards to what we've discussed today or what we'll be discussing here in the next session as well.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate it. Again, Frank, you have just a gift of being able to make it make sense and taking something that is very ambiguous and kind of confusing and help us simplify and break it down into some bite-sized parts. So thank you for that. I really appreciate the participation. I'm looking forward to how do we take this into that next session of how to do some specific discovery work to figure out where AI could potentially make sense for some further exploration into what's possible and how my operation and business could benefit. So I really encourage folks to join us there. We'll be sending out more information as follow-up on how to sign up for that. And just have a great day. And thank you all. We appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. And if there's anything you guys want to see or additional questions you might have, please hit us up on LinkedIn, connect with us. We'll have our contact information in the workbook as well. So just find us. We're accessible to you, and we'd love to be a partner in your AI journey.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.